Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of a series of podcasts that are going to be hosted by the team at Codec. I'm your host, Divya, and let's get started. Let me start by introducing myself. I am Divya Mehta, and I work as a software engineer in Product Catalog Tribe at Simpress. And we have with us Mr. Sunil Singh, who is a lead software engineer at Vistaprint Corporate Solutions at Simpress.
Yeah, thanks Divya for introduction. For today, the topic would be mostly about we called it how to migrate from monolith to a microservice. But rather, I would say what you will learn in this entire discussion is how not to do it. Right. So this will be more focused on things that we did and probably learned like things that you should do, should not do. And this will be a journey of a project which started as a monolith and has been migrating or is on a journey to be migrated to a microservice architecture, which is always like it takes a bit of time and will be a progressive journey. Like it won't come to an end because nobody would ever be satisfied with the size of the services or the granularity of the services that they create. So I'll cover that. Along with it, I'll talk about things that we did, how we failed and recovered from it, and things that went well with us and we continued doing it. So that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Well, that sounds like a thrilling journey to me. So, to begin with, I think many of us will have this question of when and why do I need to consider migration to a microservices architecture?
So a lot of people or a lot of folks new to the industry and also people who are well versed with the industry read about microservices at some point in time and feel energized to adopt it and want to migrate their products or projects they consider as a monolith, and they want to adopt microservices pattern because it is cool, it's a silver bullet, and that's a wrong assumption to start with. So whatever you are doing right now, if you have a monolithic project, that's not bad. It's not a wrong pattern, and there's nothing wrong with your monolithic project. And you should never you should never start or you should never approach microservices with an intent that this is new and I want to adopt it. That's not the right way to approach it. But there are some things that you should consider and you should know about before you start with this entire idea of migration. So if you will read about microservices, uh, you will learn about a few points. So I've made a note of them. One is most of the speakers or most of the writers will talk about increasing the scale of operation. Adopt microservices when you want to increase the scale of operation. Uh, or they would talk about accelerating the pace of change or escaping high cost of change. So all three of them are benefits of microservices, but at the same time, they may not be a drawback of a monolithic project, provided the project architecture is correct. And if you are following best practices, your monolithic project can have all three of them. So your scale of operations can be increased with a monolithic project, provided what scale you're trying to achieve and what are your requirements. So you don't take a monolithic project and scale it just because you can, but you should identify whether there is a need to scale to that level. So until you identify the scale at which you want to move, you should not pick microservices as an architecture. Second is accelerating the pace of change. So uh, if you go ahead with the microservices migration, assuming that it is going to accelerate the pace of change, that will happen at the end of the migration. And till you are migrating, your pace of change may be very slow depending on your existing architecture. So some things could be very easy to implement in your existing architecture, but might become complicated when you are on that journey and might take more time to change. So that's one aspect we should be aware of. And another is escaping high cost of change. So even on that front as well, I would say it is we have to be cautious about it. Uh, Sometimes the cost of migrating to a microservices architecture is bit higher. So if you have small features lined up and you want to do a migration, like do not forget about the cost of migration as well. So don't only count the cost of building a microservice, but consider the cost of migrating from monolith to microservice. And not to underestimate or undervalue the pattern, uh, these are the points which people tend to not spend time on and analyze them correctly for their project. And when you make a wrong choice, your speed of operation will reduce, your pace of change will reduce, and your cost of change will increase. So provided you understand the complexity of these moving parts and you understand like how these things will play around with your project, like you have to be cautious with it. So I would say that whenever you make a choice that you want to do microservices or not, don't only read articles and then decide that this is to be done, but have a holistic view of your project and then decide what on whether you want to go on this journey or not.
Well, this makes me curious on what are the anti patterns which one should know while migrating to a microservices world.
Yeah, that's a good question. So anti patterns are basically things that you should not do when you're doing microservices pattern. And most of the time, the biggest challenge is to begin with the migration. And once you begin with the migration, uh, most common anti pattern is segregating the data. People are, or across the industry, I've seen segregating the service is the easiest part, but segregating the data is the most difficult part of it. And if we don't segregate the data and put everything, like if we have a monolithic database, microservices is not done. You cannot create microservices by having your data into a single database or into a single server and having different services uh, looking at the same data, modifying them, and having dependencies on single database. Also, another anti-pattern I've seen is uh, there is an interdependency created between databases and services. So imagine if you took your monolithic project and started with the migration, and you might have created like service one, service two, service three, and you might have data one, data two, data three as databases. And then your service one connects to data one, data two, service two connects to data one, data three, and you create cross connections. uh, and there is a good reason why you need that cross connection, because you need to access to that data and you don't have that as a service. And uh, there may be a good amount of reason why you want to do it, but that's an anti pattern. Once you do it, you end up into a rabbit hole, and then you don't find a way to get out of it. So you will always have like a cross dependency and interdependent databases, and one database change breaks three services, and like there will be a lot of firefighting that you will end up doing. So avoid doing that. Instead, first figure out how you want to split your database, and then figure out how you want to build services. First doing the service and then doing the database, again an anti-pattern, ends up with a lot of issues. And yeah, there are a few more. So next is being very dogmatic about the size of the microservices. Like I've seen a lot of teams, they debate about whether this is a microservice or not and whether it like fits the standard. I must tell you, there is no standard. There isn't any benchmark that tells you what a micro is. So you may talk to any of the microservices gurus and they will tell you like there is no benchmark. There is no parameter that tells you what a micro is. So it's a very subjective thing. It could be as small as like one functionality. So again, calling out one functionality is a subjective thing. There's no such thing as like one functionality or single responsibility itself is quite difficult to achieve. Instead, whenever we say single responsibility, it always means many things. Right? You might be doing many things. So same is true with microservices. So one of the anti patterns I've seen is like when your granularity levels are very varies across projects, and you have like very small and very large projects, very large microservices, I would say, like comparatively, this is in comparison to your services, that's an anti pattern, that's a problem. And that always becomes a maintenance overhead. So try to maintain your size and granularity within, I would say, create a threshold that you will maintain these at this level, and that should help you. Otherwise, like it becomes more challenging.
So on your question, you talked about maintenance is going to be a challenge while designing microservices.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah. So what do you think one should consider while designing a microservices to keep the maintenance cost low?
Yeah. So I'll talk about it with an example. So we had a monolithic project which was into a technology, let's say uh, .NET. So we have a .NET monolith service, and we brought in a team. A new team was spinned up and said like migrate this project to a microservice. So the new team may not be a .NET expert, and these guys might come in with expertise into Node.js, and they started building their services into Node.js. They had Node.js. They started spinning up services in Node. We brought in another team. This was a Python expert. Like those guys were familiar with Python. They started spinning up services in Python. Then we brought in another team that was an expert in Ruby. They started spinning up things in Ruby. And now we have .NET, Python, Ruby, and maybe the next team could be a Java team. So this is what typically happens into a microservice, and we always cherish like this is a polyglot. So this is a term that people use. Like we ended up with a polyglot. So polyglot is good and bad. Like it's not always good. Polyglot is good when you have a variety that you can manage. But if consider your team size, if you have a team, or if you have maybe a team size which is capable enough to manage these services, it's okay. But when you are constrained, when you can't expand your teams and you don't have that capability to scale those teams, or imagine so ours is a highly international team. So we have people from different locations and we have people from different technologies, and this service that you created in Ruby will be integrated with your monolith for some time until you complete your migration. And then this Ruby service will be used round the clock across time zones, across regions. And whenever there is a production issue, you have to support it. And you might not have the Ruby team eh, present at the same time. So a Python team has to support a Ruby project at some point in time, has to fix Ruby issues because site has an issue. And it's not easy, right? You can't learn a technology while you're fixing a production issue. So you have to scale your production support along with your uh, microservices team, which also adds to the cost, right? So we have to be cautious here. We might feel like polyglot is a good thing, but there has to be some amount of boundary setup and some amount of analysis done beforehand, how much of polyglot we want, right? It should not be an uncontrolled variety of technologies that come to a polyglot or that get adopted. That becomes a most challenging part of migration.
So you talked about how microservices world should be. Uh, One question I have about migration specifically is what are the best practices which you think one should consider while thinking about migrating, specifically migrating to microservices?
Yeah, so planning is crucial. Although most of such projects starts with an experiment, by launching like one service and then trying out microservices and learning more about it. But there are some things which one should plan, and some examples of it are uh, probably what amount of automation do you right now have, and what is your capability to scale those automations. Can you build the CI pipeline for every microservice? What will be your microservice orchestration strategy? What will be your microservice testing strategy? What will be your authorization and authentication strategy? So those things, until you have thought of, you will end up with anti-patterns, creating services that look quite different. They won't look familiar to developers, and people won't be able to work across services. uh, and that I feel is a very important aspect of planning to migrate. And until you have until you have decided on adopting a technology that will help you to spin up services faster, you have to build your infrastructure pipeline. You have to have strategies in place that will help you to launch. Like launching a service is something which should become easier. So like initial first few weeks, or the first step of starting with it is to decide on these strategies and build capabilities where, like, launching is not the most important part of this, but the capability to launch and making it easier to launch is something that we should focus on initially, and then start with launching the services. Although we all jump to launch a service, and because that gives you visibility and that also makes you feel like you have done something, uh, but that's where that those are the pitfalls. Like, once you have done something, it's quite difficult to migrate to something else. So once you have your strategy in place about authorization, authentication, uh, and like container orchestration and testing and those things, then it becomes quite easy to launch. So launch should always, like, launching a service should be the last part of it, but all your effort should initially be spent on building these infrastructure things.
So you mentioned infrastructure is going to be a key part of the initial process of migration. But what do you think should be the threshold where I can say now I need to migrate to a microservices world?
um, I would say, like, there could be many different ways to deal with this. So if you have a monolithic project and you are in a state where it has reached a stage where I would call it end of life, where you think that this thing is not maintainable anymore. This thing has gone out of control, and it's quite difficult to change this, and probably I will rewrite this. So if you are on that at that stage where you will rewrite, or you are thinking of rewriting a monolithic project, I would say that consider microservices as an option. But until you reach that stage, and probably you might not want to go to microservices and want to stay around with monolith and want to continue experimenting with it, I would say it's completely fine. There should not be any pressure, or we should not consider anything as a driver here until we feel that we are like, if there is a need to scale. So if you experimented with a project, imagine we created an e-commerce site and we said we will put this to maybe a few customers, and by few I mean few hundred or few thousand customers, and we'll experiment and see whether there is a demand for such kind of product. And you experimented with it, and now you want to scale, now you want to take that to a million user, or want to take it to 100 million user. That's where you should think about microservices. So monolithic projects are probably difficult to scale because of the design with which they are built. Um, but I would say definitely there has to be, business has to drive it. It should not be the technology that is driving this completely, but there should be a business need to scale, and there should be those identifiers or signals present which tell us now, like, we are moving slow on this, we need to move faster, right? So you can move faster on a microservice project if you set it up correctly. Otherwise the speed would remain the same as monolith. As I told you, like, the infrastructure setup is the key. If you don't have the correct infra setup, microservice projects can take longer to deploy than a monolithic project with the correct pipeline and correct infra setup.
You mentioned that migration is actually driven more by business than the technology. So, in your journey, what do you think were the business drivers for this migration?
So in our case, I had a monolithic e-commerce website which was catering to a group of users, and I had a scalability problem. So I we were trying to scale this monolithic project by spinning up more instances of this, and at a point we were constrained. We said, like, even if you create, or if you launch multiple copies of this, or you launch like multiple instances of this monolith, it does not solve the problem, right? An e-commerce site, like, you have many boxes of it, and one database. At the end, database was getting constrained with the connections that could be created, and services, the scaling up was not giving us those benefits. So we had reached a threshold where we said, like, now new users cannot be served. This is the limit of it. You cannot go beyond this number. So that number could be 10K, like 10,000 users at a time. And beyond that, if you get new users, they will not be capable of serving them with the acceptable threshold limit on the response times. Services started degrading, and that's where we said like now this has to be scaled up. So you pull out the most uh, the way you deal with this is pull out the service that will give you the most benefit and scale it, right? Pull it out of monolith and then scale it. So probably it does not mean that you break everything and then go on a migration project for like years and stop everything else, but you can do it in parallel. So you do one service which is most important, which helps you to scale. It could be in our case it was like product. So product service had to scale, and we didn't had a product service, like it was integrated into the e-commerce side. So we pulled out product, we took product and we scaled it, so now it can serve any number of users earlier, which was not possible. So you pull out what is most important and it's most relevant and will give you the most benefit. uh, at times, not every organization may be capable of funding a migration project, but they would want to continue with their feature development and plus the microservice migration, which I feel is important. It's not a bad ask. Like businesses would always want the technology teams to spend time on building features that helps them drive the business, and based on your benefits that you get from business features, you use them to route, or you have to do both of them. Like there is strategy to do both of them.
So, as a tech lead on this project, what do you think one should know and consider while doing this kind of a migration project?
Yeah, so when you are in considering my specific situation, I would say that you have a monolithic project, you have a microservice migration going on, and you have a continuous demand from business to build new features. So this particular thing itself will motivate you to think more about prioritization. It's an important exercise and an important aspect of working in this kind of project, where you take up these inputs from different sections that would come to you, and you should be very good at prioritizing it, and should be good at analyzing the situation. And uh, a wrong choice would not like break everything, I would say, but definitely you will get some time to correct yourself. And I would not say that I have made the correct choices every time, but there are times when doing a feature gives you more benefit than focusing on this migration. But there are times when doing a migration is more important than doing a feature. So you should be having that capability to judge which one is more important at a particular point in time.
Well, that brings us to the end of the first episode in the series of podcasts that are going to be hosted by the team at Codec. Thank you so much, Sunil, for this articulate explanation. And thank you all for listening to this podcast. See you all in the next episode and in the upcoming podcast series. Till then, take care, stay safe, and bye bye.